Welcome to the latest edition of our Talk Death video series, where you get the chance to ask experts your questions about all things death and dying.
A reminder to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to follow us on Instagram at TalkDeath for your daily dose of death positivity.
Today's guest is Cassandra Yonder, a fellow Canadian advocating for community-centered death care. Cassandra wants to encourage cultural re-engagement with dying, death care, and grief.
Cassandra runs one of the largest Facebook groups dedicated to alternative death care practices, as well as deathcaring.ca, a virtual school for community death caring. Check out the description below to learn more about Cassandra and deathcaring.ca.
Welcome, Cassandra.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Paul Crapol on Facebook has a question that I think is related to this discussion, and they wanted to know if, their question was, should folks invite the community to come to their loved ones' funerals, beyond family and friends? And I guess I would add to that, are people doing that? Is that something that you would encourage people to do?
Well, it might be getting at this idea of home funeral, and is there something kind of scary and bad about that? I do hear sort of rumblings that because it's a movement, and some people see it as a new age movement, that I think people have some fear that what if the neighbors find out, and am I doing something wrong? We've really incorporated these myths of the infectious corpse, of the fact that the dead don't belong to us anymore. These myths, even when you know the myth, they're so incorporated into our culture. Like, I know for a fact, even for myself, I've spent hours and hours on the phone talking to transport companies. Like, I'm clear about the laws and the rules around transporting human remains in the province of Nova Scotia where I live. I'm clear about it. But still, when I'm presenting to a group of people and they say, "What? Really? Can I really put my loved one's body in the back of my van without a transport permit?" I still am like, oh, maybe that's wrong. Like, I'll totally second guess myself. And so I think that it's a social movement. It's a social movement. So it's a little bit radical still. I feel like there's a little bit of what will the neighbors think? And so kind of trying to be a little bit secretive or limit what people know. But the bigger question there around, who should attend funerals? Well, everybody, right? I think that it's just an opportunity for ceremony and ritual in ways that we're lacking in our society and in our culture. And it's just one way. I don't think, again, that anybody who doesn't want to attend a funeral should be forced to attend one. I hope that they're welcoming environments where people can come and go through what they need to go through. I will say, as a grief counselor or according to grief therapy, that what grief needs is an opportunity. It needs an opportunity to be expressed. It needs an opportunity that people make meaning of what's happened. And I think that that's really the role of funerals. It makes me a little bit sad when I think of this trend of celebrations of life. A celebration of life sounds like a wonderful thing, and I totally get it. Why people would want it for themselves, why they'd want it for their loved ones. Like, no one wants to think of their family in pain. But grief needs opportunity. And I think funerals are such an important part of our collective living and our village making to be able to go through them together. So yeah, I think they're kind of an essential part of being human, really. And so I hope that people will just attend them in the way that feels right for them.
In an earlier video, I talked about how, sometimes I've personally dealt with funerals for people who have been unclaimed. And one of the first funerals I didn't even realize that that's what it was for. I was just, an assistant, and it was at this church. It was a Roman Catholic service. And there was all these, older ladies that came up to me after and thanked us. And I learned that none of them actually knew the deceased. And they were just there as part of a community to, be present during his funeral service. We don't have that much anymore because not as many people go to church or, have some type of religious institution like that where they may have, that type of opportunity. So I would almost be interested in understanding, for Paul's question in particular is, of course, I think you should or could invite your community, but the question is almost, what does that look like today? What does community in sort of this secular world look like today, and how do you even reach out to your community in that way? But it was a really beautiful moment, especially when I realized that none of these people actually knew the deceased, and they were just there for their
That is
support.
beautiful. That is beautiful. And it begs again this question of community. A friend of mine who teaches in the virtual school about grief and bereavement, his name's Roy Ellis, and he was considering, I don't know if he was doing a formal work in this area, but he was considering how community or how grief might be different in different geographical locations, looking more at like the urban rural divide.
Hmm.
And so to me, like I see you guys thinking of like, yeah, who is my community and where are the edges and does it like include my neighbor and is it a circle around my house? But for me where I live, it's a circle around the house. I mean, there's I'm in the middle of the woods. So anybody who lives within, a few hundred feet in any which way is for sure part of the community.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think in rural settings, the whole idea of community takes on a really different. And I mean, I guess I kind of tend to think better, but not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of being a community. And well, I mean, in the death caring world, the virtual community has become so meaningful to me,
Right.
and that's what we're doing here tonight. But yeah, just questioning the nature of community and then how we gather.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like that will, that could also help to reduce that uncomfortableness that people may have around funerals and around death. And when it becomes more of a community gathering and a community event, then maybe that is, a part of how we can change that sentiment.
Yeah, I think that potential is there for sure. I agree.